Well, hello again. Us here at Freaky Stories. We got some real cool ones here for you. Maurice, what are you doing?
Oh, I went to the dentist and my filling's picking up radio.
Yeah?
Cesspool.
Yeah.
A new band from Texas. Hot sound.
They said, we'll give you a sidekick. It'll make life easy.
This here yarn is true, having been recounted to me by the confidant of a close acquaintance. Our tale is one of fishermen who sailed the world quite happily until they found a little scrap of treasure-hunting mappery. They wanted to get rich, they thought. Were tired of the cod they caught. They dreamed of gold and jewelry and big fat steaks and gay parade. Navigator viewed the stars and drew a course quite readily. They circumnavigated the entire globe methodically. They stumbled on the isle they sought. A subgroup hatched a devious plot involving double crosses, theft, and bloody treachery. They'd let Smart Butch do all the work and find the treasure spot. They'd steal the loot right off of him and strand him there to rot. They'd sail off in the ship alone and spend the gold on stately homes. And finally girls would give them more than just a time of day. Now the X was spotted underneath a large, enormous coconut palm. They unearthed a gilded box that held a most peculiar charm. A skull was lodged in limbs on high. The charm fit in one of both eyes, and chosen incorrectly would precipitate grievous bodily harm. What to do? They had no clue. Pick left or right. All the would-be pirates stand to quake with fright. The subplot hatcher schemed again behind a nearby kumquat bush. They'd fix the straws to make sure that the shortest went to poor old Butch. They'd make him climb the tree alone. To accidents he was quite prone. He'd spring the booby trap for sure and leave them all real flush. With spider charm in hand, Butch hit it up the frightening treasure tree. And face to face with skull and bones, he chose the left eye hastily. Could lead to riches yet unknown. Or had unlucky Butch just blown his only chance at fortune and be left a quivering mass. The charm fit in the socket with a most peculiar click. It hit some levers hidden in the tree trunk, very thick. A chain reaction was begun. The tree bent back and Butch was flung across the aisle above the forest brilliant canopy. The rotters laughed at Butch's demise. He'd been flattened by a dead man's eyes. Meanwhile, Butch was flying high above the palms and cacti plants. You'd think he'd be a goner, but you'd never tell from just one glance. Though screaming loud, I must choose wrong, he'd soon pick out a better song. Cause here's where this tall tale takes on its last enormous twist. The Cadley trio waited for the tree to drop its priceless loot on top of Fleece and Butch. Each planned to shaft his bosom buds to boot. But plans this tree had of its own. Its trunk flung open with a groan and dosed them not with riches, but with gods. A bug-filled sob. Just string the trees a double cross and two-way trap in one. But yelled the map was set adrift by tricksters just for fun. Or threesome groaned with goop thigh high. There was no right to both those eyes. At least Butch got the worst of it, said Stanley as he cried. They all watched Butch top his arc. His descent brought comfort to their wretched hearts. See, the strange thing is that bad guys never finish ahead of better ones. And Butch's flight was landing him in much more than fresh zebra dung. Amongst the fungi and mushrooms were thousands of mint gold doubloons. The left eye was the right eye to have chosen, our guy sang. What do you think did happen to the wretched double-crossers three? They stuck for days beneath the skull and crossbones so-called treasure tree. They did not know they were alone. Their ship had long since sea-bound gone. The riches they would never see, nor stately homes, nor gay parade. Their double-crosses crossed them back. Their scheming butts were stuck in sap. They lived their days on coconut milk on this deserted island.
You say your dental work is picking up radio, huh? Let's see. Oh, man. What have you got in there?
Just last week's grill scraping.
Oh, jeez. Okay, I won't breathe. I'll just listen.
Stay tuned for the latest traffic reports on the hour.
Wow. Can you change the station?
Oh, sure.
It's now 18 degrees. Tomorrow will be muggy, followed by Tukey, Wanky, Thurgy.
Maybe I can get some music.
I think it's time for another freaky story, don't you?
This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine, Judy. Now, when we were kids, Judy had this thing for chocolates. Don't get me wrong, I totally support a person's constitutional right to chocolate. But Judy, well, she had this completely gross habit of taking a bite out of each chocolate in the box and spitting out the one she didn't like. Which meant that if Judy ever offered you a chocolate, you'd be getting half-eaten, saliva-coated rejects. Yeah, me. When the rest of us started dating boys, Judy started too. But she just wanted boys to show up at her door with a box of chocolates, and then she sent the boys home and ate the candy. Sometimes she'd arrange to have 2 or 3 dates an evening. You'd think with so many chocolate zits, she'd have a hard time getting a date. All I can say is thank goodness for pancake makeup. But Judy knew that she couldn't keep it up. She needed to find a permanent sugar daddy, so to speak, and fast. Fortunately, along came Milton Sweet, a sweaty, nervous geek. But he had one redeeming feature. His daddy owned the Sweet Treat Chocolate Company. So, a strategically dropped notebook here, a few bats of the old eyelashes there. Judy had him wrapped around her little finger. And after a few subtle hints, Milton was doing his own wrapping boxes of chocolates to give Judy as presents. Of course, Judy would spit out about 90% of them, but she was still happy. Until one day, Judy found the ultimate chocolate. Now, you'd think finding the ultimate chocolate would have made Judy ecstatic, which it did. Unfortunately, she inhaled the thing in 1.5 seconds, then discovered it was the only one of its kind in the box. The others all had the stupid gooey center she hated. Judy nearly had a conniption. The best chocolate ever, and only one of them in the entire box. She just had to get more. But it didn't matter how many boxes Milton gave Judy. There just weren't enough crunchy-centered chocolates in each box to satisfy her. Finding them soon became an obsession. Eventually, Judy realized the solution had been under her nose all along. All she had to do was fight her way through the mounds of discarded chocolate boxes piled up in her room. Then find Milton and convince him to sneak her into his dad's chocolate factory. There she could have all the crunchy-centered chocolate she wanted. Now, convincing Milton wasn't that hard. If Judy was thinking with her stomach, Milton was thinking with his hormones. He figured a nighttime tour of a spooky automated factory would allow Judy to get closer to her beloved chocolates, while he got closer to Judy. So that night, they sneaked inside the factory. Soon they found conveyor belts for chocolate-covered cherries, nougat, coconut, all spewing out 100 candies a minute, all of which Judy hated. Slowly but surely, they went through seemingly every conveyor belt in the place, coming across every chocolate-covered fruit, nut, or cream on the planet. But still, none of Judy's special crunchy-centered chocolates. Until finally, they came across one last conveyor belt, tucked away in the factory basement. Unlike the others, it was old and slow and nearly falling apart. Judy didn't like the looks of it at all. But in the interest of science, she tried one of the candies. Eureka! It had the crunchy, chewy center she'd been searching for. Without even thinking, she grabbed handfuls and began stuffing her face. But what was the filling? The sign on the filling vat said raspberry cream, but it sure didn't taste creamy or fruity. Overcome by curiosity, Judy decided to take a peek into the vat of filling to see what it was. And then she spit out her chocolate faster than she'd ever done in her life, because inside the vat, gorging themselves on raspberry cream filling and then falling onto the conveyor belt, were hundreds of crawling, squirming insects that had found a sweet place to nest. Her crunchy, chewy centers were cockroaches! Ugh. This is a true story, and it happened to a friend of mine, Judy, who never ate another chocolate again. If I were you, I'd read the list of ingredients on your next box of chocolates very carefully.
I'm trying to get some decent music here. Oh, man. You should get push-button teeth. After this story, we'll see what else Maurice can get. How's that? Don't move, don't move!
This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine. Joe was a traveling salesman. His territory covered most of the Omega sector. He used to drive around hawking what he called quality merchandise. Time store stuff. Graph jigs and time coders. He liked the ladies. And the ladies, they liked him back. One night he had finished his last call at my shop. I'd just placed a big order. Joe went out for a steak dinner to celebrate. He was eating alone, reading the paper. It was hard to miss the headline. Neuroblock killer stalks the east side. Some nutball was using a blocker on unsuspecting motorists. Neuroblockers. What a way to go. The thought sent shivers up Joe's spine. He paid his tab and started to leave. That's when he saw her. A vision in red, standing at the door, gazing out into the night. The kind of dame that could get you to do whatever she wanted. All she had to do was snap her fingers.
"Excuse me, mister,"
said the woman in red.
"Could you give me a lift?"
Joe couldn't believe his luck. "Sure," said Joe. "Which way you going?"
"Whichever way you are."
Joe didn't know whether to pinch himself or not. Because if this was a dream, he sure didn't want to wake up. Joe started the thrum motors. It was well past midnight and the traffic was light as he pulled out into the street and up the East Side Highway. It's really dangerous these days, but with that Neuroblock wacko out there, he laughed. She was a real looker. He turned to steal another peek at her, and that's when he came nose to nose with a Neuroblocker, right in his face. She was the East Side killer.
"All right, mister,"
she said.
"You can pull over here and don't try anything funny."
Funny was the last thing on his mind. Joe knew that if he didn't do something quick, he'd wind up just another notch on the old Neuroblocker. And he didn't want to go out that way. So he floored it, jammed the pedal right to the metal, till there was nowhere else for it to go. The car leapt forward, ran a red light, roared through an intersection. It was late at night, no other traffic, no witnesses.
"You'll get us both killed!"
She screamed. "Maybe I will, but if I gotta go, I'm not going alone. I'm taking you with me." The car picked up speed. Phone poles flashed by like slats on a picket fence. Streetlights flashed out an SOS.
"Stop the car!"
And then what, said Joe? Let you use that blocker on me? What do you take me for, a sucker? Lady, you're running out of options, and we're running out of road. Manhattan's an island, and Joe's car was chewing up pavement like it was last call at an all-you-can-eat buffet. The lady in red was starting to get scared. Real scared.
"Stop the car! You're crazy! Let me out!"
She screamed. "Drop the blocker, and I'll think about it," said Joe. He fell to the floor. "Now listen up. I'm gonna slow down, and you're getting out." And with that, he pushed a button. The gull-wing door on her side hissed open. The wind whipped her hair. The car bled off speed until it was going about 30. "Lady, we're out of time." "It's now or never," said Joe as she climbed into the doorway. "Jump!" And she leapt into the night. Joe heard a splash. Then he stomped the brakes. The car fishtailed in the rain and skidded out along the pier, chewing up railings, spitting out matchsticks. Then it came to a rest, just inches from the briny depths. Joe sat for a moment to collect himself. Then he drove back up the pier. A crowd of late-night rubberneckers had gathered round the base of a lamppost. Joe didn't look. Something told him she wasn't going to bother him anymore. This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine. Funny thing is, the neural blocker never struck again. Joe, well, from that night on, he always traveled alone.
Count is 2 balls, 2 strikes. Hudson winds up, throws. Ball 3.
Ball 3? That was a strike! It was right over... I saw it! I saw it! He's getting TV on his tonsils! You guys watch the next story. I gotta see the 8th inning. Okay, Maurice, tilt down. I can't see the field.
This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine. Anna was busy mulling over how she was going to explain to her parents when she returned home that she was maintaining a solid D average. Well, she never was one to fret about much, but it was quite a quandary she found herself in. Of course, it was completely of her own doing. Her sorority sisters made jokes that the D stood for daydreaming, as that seemed to be what Anna did best. They weren't much for offering sympathy. In fact, they voted Anna sloth of the school term and awarded her the task of cleaning the sorority house attic. She came across an old trunk. Her idle curiosity got the best of her, and she lifted the lid. Inside, Anna found a yellowed letter. It was dated March 17, 1780, and was addressed Dear Mother and Father. Anna, not all that anxious to undertake the job of cleaning, couldn't help but read on. I'm sorry I've been remiss in writing you this term, but if you bear with me, I will try to explain. The trip went well, the carriage was well appointed, and the horses were strong and true. The countryside was beautiful. However, things took a dramatic turn when our carriage was held up by a highwayman. The last thing I remember, he was slicing the air with a razor-sharp rapier. Then I believe I must have lost consciousness. It seems I had been kidnapped by the masked bandit who I came to know as Rodrigo. And together we sailed off for adventures on the high seas. Unfortunately, the accommodations were less than desirable. In fact, I was tossed below deck with little food and water. Oh, how I longed to feel the warmth of the sun on my face. Then one day, my wish came true, though it was not as I expected. Any romantic notions I once had about life at sea were quickly quelled, for it was a hard life indeed. I was awarded the duty of swabbing the deck. It was a task that became more grueling as the days wore on. Soon I decided it was time for a change of scenery and set a plan of escape in motion. But first, of course, I had to dispatch the pirates in a bare-fisted battle to the deck. I was lucky enough to secure passage on another vessel. Then, when it seemed our hopes were to be dashed like so many storm-bound ships run aground on a rocky shore, we found a hospitable port. Actually, it was more of a tropical paradise. As I drank in the rare scents, I slipped down into the cool water. Once I ridded my body of the swamp leeches, we were welcomed to the island by a tribe of natives. Oh, how colorful they were with their bright face paint. They were nice enough to treat us to many of the local delicacies like beetle larvae, spider's eggs, and their traditional staple, which appeared to be some kind of exotic noodles. At first, we thought the natives were trying to tell us that the dish would help make us smarter. Imagine our surprise when we realized that we were in fact eating real brains. Thus, the final chapter of our journey ended with a fond farewell to our newfound friends and a hasty return to our ship. We were lucky enough to procure some oars for the return voyage and were picked up along the way by a galleon of Spaniards and ferried back to the continent. As we are now safely back in the country, I'm writing to let you know that Rodrigo and I plan to marry and would like your approval. He really is a wonderful man once you get to know him. And anyway, he'll do for now. Your loving daughter, Emma. P.S. Just to let you know, I arrived at school on time and without incident and have no immediate plans for marriage. I am failing French and social studies, though, and wanted you to see these marks in their proper perspective. Love, E. This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine, Anna, and it gave her an idea. In fact, it inspired her to pen a very imaginative letter of her own. Dear Mother and Father,
Okay, Michelle writes from Sudbury. Dear Larry, my big brother scares me, by telling me we have ghosts. Is there such a thing as ghosts?
You bet there is.
Oh, come on, Maurice, don't scare the little girl.
No, yeah, wait here.
Huh? Believe this guy.
Ooh, I am the ghost of Ted's Diner.
I don't believe this. So, Mr. Ghost, you gonna scare me or something?
Ooh, if I can't scare
Yeah.
you, I'll bring all my ghosty friends. They're even scarier than me.
Ooh, look at me. I'm shivering in my boots. Now, don't you worry, Michelle. I happen to know this here ghost. Watch this. Coochie, 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 coo. Coochie, coochie, coo. Coochie, coochie, coo.
I see you found him.
Coochie, coo. Yeah, and tickle him, too. Ah!
So how you doing? Oh, not bad. You know, scaring some people, ghosting around a bit.